My name is Tamiko. I was born in 1979. I'm 44 years old. I identify as a she. My occupation is I'm technically a website designer, but I also have my own private tattoo studio, and I do a lot of volunteering for Japantown, including serving as kind of like the executive director role as president of the Japantown Business Association.
Right.
Did I catch all the things?
Yes, yes. And the first question is, tell me a little bit about your family background.
Okay. I'm fifth generation Japantown. My grandparents had a gas station here on the corner of Fifth and Jackson, also known as now currently Roy Station. We turned the gas station into a coffee shop with my parents, and I've lived in San Jose my entire life. It's kind of a neat thing that I'm in a place where my grandparents were born and my great grandparents also were, my grandparents went to camp, concentration or internment camp, like most Japanese Americans. They were in Wyoming and Arizona. And my parents met in middle school here in San Jose. They both went to Hoover and Lincoln. And so they fell in love, had kids. I'm the eldest of 8. There were 3 of us that are biological, and then we adopted 5. So we go from 44 to I think the youngest is like 23. And it's a unique background to be half Japanese, half Swiss in Japantown. I think it's becoming a lot more, a lot of the mixed hapas are coming out in force, but that's my background.
What was it like growing up during the time and place of your childhood?
It was pretty neat. I mean, I'm a standard 80s kid. You know what I mean? Nintendo, skating outside, biking around the neighborhood. I hung out here in Japantown. I grew up in downtown. Our family home is actually where the arena site is. So we were eminent domained by the arena and we actually picked up our Victorian house and moved it to another part of San Jose. But when I was being babysat by my grandparents, I hung out in Japantown. And so, it was, just kind of running around, driving my grandparents nuts, because my grandpa had the gas station. He had this little we called it the ding ding bell. Like it was this little hose that would let you know that the cars would come into the station. And one of our favorite things was just jump up and down on that thing until he told us to knock it off, so it was pretty fun being down here. It was a nice place.
And during that time, did you have like a firm community you felt connected to? And like, were there places that you felt like a sense of belonging, like places you went to as a child that you still go to these days?
Kind of. I love being down here, but there was also this tension from being a mixed kid. There were comments made probably by, internment survivors that, were a little bit derogatory. We did feel less than compared to some of the fully 100% Japanese kids. And so there was always a little bit of that tension there. So I love being here. I love running around, going to like Kogura Company, which is still here, or Nikaku Arts, which is still here. My grandparents had an apartment complex next to the gas station, and I used to sit and watch the barber shop from the front window and just sit there and watch this guy named Sam Sakota cut hair. And he retired, those were some of my favorite memories. I love being here, but there was also that, kind of unspoken thing where every now and then somebody would say something very derogatory about, oh yeah, well, you're not like the other ones, or, made us feel a little less than, and that part I didn't much care for.
Can you talk about your teenage years? Did you join a community or group with similar interests?
No, I wasn't at all involved in Japantown in my teenage years. During that time, we were busy renovating my parents' house, you know, because we had moved it from the arena site to like the outskirts of Willow Glen. And we were dealing with a lot of stuff in regards to problems with the city, problems with the redevelopment agency. We were virtually homeless for 3 years. You know, we lived in our garage and then had meals in a trailer, and we had an outhouse out front for 3 years. So that whole time was spent trying to survive and just get through things. Those were my early teenage years, from like 10 to 13. And then by the time I was 15, my parents decided to adopt, and then all of our emphasis was on raising the kids. My siblings are all special needs kids that, you know, came from the area. Their parents unfortunately were addicted to drugs, so we had some unique challenges in raising them and you know, bringing them into the family. So that was all we did, was just work on the house, the family. And I was also homeschooled at that time, so I wasn't really going out or doing anything outside of the house. I got my GED equivalent when I was 15, and by the time I was 15 and a half, I went to City College. So by then I was focused on going to college. So my attachment or participation in anything civic or Japantown was negligible at that time.
And how did the transition from young adulthood shape your participation in like the communities that matter to you? Like, what has changed and what has stayed the same for you?
I think the realization really occurred in my 20s. So when I was about 25, you know, my brother, my sister, and I were the eldest three, wanted to move out. We were working to, you know, with my dad's construction company. We were raising our kids, you know, but we were like, okay, it's time to get out, you know. And honestly, rent's expensive here, you know. It's impossible to find a place to live. It's still true almost 20 years later, you know. And so I had reached out to my cousin and inquired about a space above Gombe restaurant. And that's where I am right now. I said, hey, can we rent this space and live here? And at the time, my brother and I had kind of started our website design business. So we were doing that in my parents' basement, and we needed a place where we could also live and work. And so we moved here. And at the time, my mom was like, why are you going to Japantown? I do not understand this move, because she goes, you weren't treated great as a kid. Why do you want to come back? And I said, it's cheap rent. I need to go someplace, you know? So it wasn't until like a couple years in of being here that I realized, oh my goodness, there's something here that I need to take care of and appreciate. You know, it's not like I didn't appreciate it before, but the gravity of realizing this is where your great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents are from or died, you know, you kind of go, wow, there's like, I belong here, you know, because I'd always anticipated that by my mid-20s, this was just a quick landing spot before I moved to San Francisco. It really didn't. I was kind of a late bloomer in seeing the importance of remaining here. And so that's kind of what changes. And I don't even know what it specifically was, but it kind of dawned on me, and I was like, oh no, we're part of something here. So that's what happened in our like mid-20s.
Can you talk about a community you were most recently you felt a strong sense of belonging? Did you experience growing up shape the work you do with your current community life, and do you connect cultural workers to the Japantown community?
Okay. So Japantown is it for me. Like, I'm here 24/7. This is where I feel the strongest ties. You know, I live and work here on the same block. We eventually moved out of this office space. We kept it as an office, but I'm renting a place down the street. We opened the coffee shop, and you know, literally I almost never leave. Like, people laugh at me when they see me in downtown or any other neighborhood, because they're like, you're just always in Japantown. And this is where I feel the strongest sense of community. It's it really is like a small town, and that's what I'm appreciating about it, is that I know all my neighbors. It takes me 30 minutes to walk home, even though it's the same block, because you run into every neighbor, you say hi, you check in. God forbid I walk in front of the coffee shop and then that I get stopped another, amount of time. But it truly is home, and the sense of community is very, very strong here. Everybody knows everybody else. I think to some degree that my mom was kind of cautioning on that, like when we moved here, like, your life is going to be under a microscope. How are you going to like it? And I'm totally fine with that. You know what I mean? I have no problem with it. Everybody knows everybody's business. It really is an extended family. And so you asked, how has it shaped the work I do? It's not really, it kind of is not related. Like the business that I have with my brother doing website design is almost like a separate entity. I mean, we do have some nonprofit clients within the community. We're always helping people out with technical stuff or web stuff, but it's almost like that's truly secondary to the civic stuff that we do. My brother, my father, and my sister sweep Japantown every morning. Like, they sweep Jackson Street from 4th to 6th. I run the farmers market from May to October. Every person in this family volunteers almost to a kind of ridiculous degree. So I would say that it's the civic participation that informs more of the life than the corporate work does. Corporate stuff pays the bills. You know what I mean? And then you asked, do I connect cultural workers to the Japantown community? Can you clarify that question? What does that mean?
I can actually clarify it, actually, because I know that you did some mural projects with the community.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the Japantown mural project. I was tasked by the Office of Cultural Affairs to do a mural around what is now 6th and Jackson, an apartment complex a block away. And the contract and discussion phase went so long that by the time I had to meet the deadline, it was not possible for me to create something to span a quarter of the city block. We're talking about over 60 panels to wrap 6th Street and then Jackson Street. And I was freaking out. I literally just lost my mind, because I was like, I wanted to do a good job, but it wasn't possible to create 60 individual pieces of artwork for the parcel. And so what I had done was I reached out to all the folks that I knew in Japantown that either worked here, lived here, created art here, had studio space here, and asked everyone to be part of this, and had 50 unique artists. I got artists from the middle school, the former Burnett Middle School is now Mwekma Oloni. They created a panel, and by spreading it out, it wasn't an intention to relieve myself of work as much as I just thought it'd be cool to see other people's stuff too. And inadvertently, it made this huge project that everyone felt really proud about, and it further reinforced their commitment or their feeling towards Japantown. So that part was pretty cool. I didn't expect it to be as powerful as it was to the people who participated in it.
Has the community space in Japantown changed over time? And if it has, how has it affected the community members? And did you see COVID have an effect on the community? And I know that you mentioned Roy's coffee shop. Have you seen any generational mom and pop stores close like that over time?
Yes. Over time, this place has become a lot more diverse and more inclusionary. I mean, I remember I was really proud the first time I saw a gay couple holding hands walking down the street in Japantown. And I was like, we've finally reached a point where people feel safe to be themselves here. And I didn't think that was even possible. You know what I mean? There are growing pains as things change, because we've got our old guard and new guard. We've got some folks who don't want to see things change too much, and I understand that. But there's always sometimes there's a little tinge of nationalism with that. And I want to be respectful of the fact that, yeah, I would love to see more Japanese businesses here. I want to see more of the legacy business owners continue to pass things down generationally to their grandkids. But I also want to make sure that there's space for other people. And so all the new business owners here are Filipino, Korean, Hispanic. We've got, and it's amazing. I think it's one of the most diverse neighborhoods that you could be part of. So I want to make sure that, you've got one hand in the past and then also look towards the future without making anyone feel unseen or unheard. But so part of my role is, with the JBA, is to make sure that everyone is kind of happy. Maybe like you just acknowledge the feelings, steer things in a certain way. That the new businesses take guidance really well. I always give them the parameters of what the old guard expects and how to make things right to, make sure that they don't mistakenly offend anybody. You know what I mean? There are certain things that we have to be respectful of that historically I think are important. And it's not even about respecting Japanese Americans, but historically, this place, these feelings, and the new guard, they're totally cool with adopting, these parameters. So it goes as well as I think anything could. COVID strained a lot of the businesses financially. I mean, none of them closed because of COVID, as far as I can tell, but it did prompt some early retirements. Some of these things just didn't make it into the news where, businesses had been on the fence for a little while, and that just kind of pushed them over the edge. So yeah, everyone's still, I think, feeling the effects of it. You know what I mean? And it's mainly not COVID per se, it's inflation, it's staffing. It's really hard to find staff right now. Cost of goods is very expensive. For a while, like for Roy's, we couldn't get straws, couldn't get plastic cups, things like that. So I think people are starting to feel a little bit better about stuff. We're starting to come out of it a little bit more. So yeah, I'm optimistic.
What does you got this, Omar?
Go ahead, Omar.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. I was gonna ask, what does it mean to belong in a community? I know you talked about how different diversity and inclusivity has happened in Japantown, but what does it mean to belong in that community?
I think it means a different thing for everybody. We've got our business owners, we have our residents, we have people who come visit. But I think the people who are the most embedded in the community live and work here. And I think we have a pretty high percentage of people who both live and work here. And I think it informs them in a different way than people who just come in. And I'm even speaking about like Japanese Americans who, like, maybe they grew up here and went to the church here, went to a Obon festival, went to Nikki Matsuri, but then they live someplace else. So they only come back during festivals. And I'm trying to get more of them to actually be here, because there's the day-to-day things that only the people who live and work here pick up on. You know what I mean? So we have anything from, people volunteering on a daily basis with WWII, giving out meals to seniors, to running some of the retail stores. I mean, those are some of the most deeply connected community members. And then you have people who, that whole spectrum, the people who come here on the weekends and enjoy going to Nijiya or picking up some shave ice. And everybody's welcome. It's there's not a greater importance assigned to people who live and work here. I just think that their knowledge of what's actually happening here is a little bit more informed.
How do you account for the changing sense of community in Japantown?
Um, it's popular. It's becoming popular. I think social media has made a big difference in changing who comes to visit here. Like in the 90s, we were always told that Japantown almost died. Like you could lay down in the middle of Jackson Street in the middle of the day, and nobody would run you over for like hours. You know, it was that much of a ghost town. Um, and you know, little by little, you know, we have the coffee shop, we have new businesses coming in, we have a influx of new residents, and that's changing the dynamic significantly. So, good and bad. I mean, I think that I the great part is that there are a whole new generation of people appreciating Japantown, coming to visit, learning about Japanese culture, putting on kimonos. I mean, it's not an appropriation thing. Put on a kimono, come dance with us. You know, last year the Obon Festival, this San Jose Obon Festival got the record for the most dancers in a continental U.S. Obon, which is awesome. You know, I love to see that. So, um, I think word of mouth has really taken off, and it's interesting when I leave the area and I'll go to downtown Willow Glen, Santa Clara, and people will say, "Oh yeah, I know about Japantown." Whereas like a few years ago, people were like, "I didn't know there was a Japantown in San Jose." And we are one of the last three in the United States, and we're considered like one of the most historic because we have all the old buildings still and a lot of the same legacy businesses. But to see people come in and you always tell when somebody's new because they're walking around, they kind of like staring around, not, you know, watching where they're going. But yeah, I think everything's adding up. I think there's a group of people who feel comfortable coming back now that it's more diverse, like us Hapa kids. We're coming back. Some of the grandkids are coming back. We've got a new audience coming back, finding us through social media or through their friends. So yeah, there's a lot of things at play, but it's definitely changing from year to year as far as who's here, who's moving here. We see a lot more people moving here. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
And what places do you find yourself like going to nowadays? Like
Oh,
repeat.
I'm just here. I'm here all day long. Like if I have a business meeting, it'll be at Roy's. It might be at J-Town Pizza. You'll find me at Kaita having dinner. You know, like it's just everything's here. And then I try to bring in folks that I think will get along here and like want to open businesses in things that I want, you know? So, for example, we've got a breakfast place that will be opening in the next couple of years. We finally have a pizza parlor, you know, J-Town Pizza. I've always wanted a pizza place. Yeah, a pizza place down here. I've even encouraged another coffee company to come in, even though we have a coffee shop or my parents have a coffee shop. There's another coffee vendor that I want to bring in because he's a good person. He's a friend. He gets the whole dynamic of what we're trying to build here. So anyone who I think gets this sense of community and understands what it means to not just try to suck the life out of an area and profit off of it, but be part of it in a positive way. That's where I'm going to be. That's who I'm encouraging to come in.
One interest we have is learning what you think the future of Japantown should be like.
Okay, what it should be like. Should be like, should behave. That's one big thing that I really care deeply about. I'm kind of a jerk about that. It's a matter of being respectful. I can't say that everyone's 100% on this, but I really do impart the belief that if you're going to be here, don't be a jerk. We have a couple entities that just don't play by the rules. You know what I mean? During COVID, we had a shooting, you know, at an illegal nightclub here. That was very destructive. You know, for the most part, you want to see people do what they can to make a living. You know what I mean? You want to respect their boundaries. But if anybody's doing anything that harms their neighbor or causes conflict or stokes racial tensions, I can't, I'm not cool with that. So that's what my feeling is what Japantown should be. It should be a place where people feel safe, people can be themselves. They can, gay couples can walk down the street holding hands. You can dress up in a furry costume. I don't care. You know what I mean? Come down from FurCon or anime, fanime. I don't care. But be respectful. I want it to be clean. We care very much about cleanliness. With our family cleaning Japantown every day, we're really on respecting each other's spaces, making sure it stays clean, and people don't leave dog shit or things like that. You know what I mean? Be a good neighbor. That's what I think the future of Japantown should look like. If it sways a little bit more Japanese or a little Filipino, bring in some more cultural businesses, I'm cool with that. But it's just a matter of just like, I would like to see harmony where I want it to be a model for the other parts of San Jose, where you can have appreciation for all these cultural differences and yet everyone gets along. Nobody feels like, oh, I can't go there because I'm not Japanese. I really don't want any of that type of feeling down here. So however it looks like, I don't know, but it just has to have that vibe. You know what I mean? You got to feel like you're coming down here, you can enjoy the place, you can enjoy the food, you can enjoy the festivities, and nobody's going to be looking down their nose at you.
Do you have any questions about this interview process, or did it bring anything to mind that we didn't cover?
Well, I was just kind of curious who else. I do know of another friend that you all talk to, and I'm curious, what are you gaining out of this and in talking to individuals?
For me personally, I think just the different perspectives from the community members in Japantown and gaining an understanding of how we should, I guess, interact with other people, but also gaining an understanding of just the historical and cultural context of where we live, especially with San Jose, such a diverse place.
Right.
And just also meeting a bunch of really cool individuals who are really passionate about what they do.
Oh, that's neat.
And I think that, so what's kind of weird is, I guess I didn't put this together. When I was 15, we had this project actually about Japantown. And me and a group of other Santa Teresa students went to Roy's coffee station. I think we interviewed your mom.
That sounds really familiar.
Yes. So I don't know if like Santa Teresa students are still doing that or having that.
It's been a few years since my mom's talked to a class, but that was really cool. That was when that started happening, I was really thrilled. So I'm glad that so that was very informative for you, I guess.
It was really cool to dissect another culture, because I went to the Mexican Heritage Plaza as a kid. So
yep.
It was interesting to talk about another culture and another group of history. And it was just a cool thing. I don't know where that voice memo is, but I have the interview process somewhere.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, I mean, we got friends who work at MHP. We are really tied in with MHP. So I mean, I love seeing this collaborative process between the different areas, because I mean, I'm old enough. I remember when there were certain parts of town you just didn't really want to go to certain times of day, or you were warned against it. Your parents would tell you, oh, don't hang out here. And even in Japantown, I wasn't allowed to go to Seven and Bamboo, when I was, in my early 20s, just stuff like that. And it's nice that I think everybody's changing that dynamic a little bit. You know what I mean? Every place feels a little bit more welcoming than it did when we were growing up.
I think for me, what I like about this is that you get insights into different communities, because for me, I'm originally from Gilroy, where you know, I'm 33 years old, and so when I was younger, it was still like, I mean, it's expanded a lot, but was still pretty small when I was younger. Just to see like the similarities, like, oh yeah, like everyone knew each other's business, you know, like the different storefronts and everything, like, oh well, I went to high school with that guy and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool to see the parallels. And still like San Jose is bigger than Gilroy, but you still have those, you know, in like, you know, your area. And so I think that's really cool.
That totally. And San Jose really is a smaller town than anyone anticipates. Like you throw a stone, you're gonna hit somebody that you know through 6 degrees of separation. It's just, and you know, the more you get out and talk to folks, you go, oh my God, it's a good thing I'm not misbehaving or anything, because like this person knows my cousin who dated my friend. It all comes back around. So it really is the biggest small town you can imagine. And I feel like Gilroy is I mean, it's growing so much right now. And so many of my friends are moving from San Jose to Gilroy. And, you know, it's cool. It's cool to see.
I have another question I'm just really curious about. How's your relationship, I guess, with other business associations, or kind of like the Japantown Business Association relationship with like the city council, or I know your guys' council member, Omar Torres? So I'm just more curious on that.
We're good. I mean, I've talked to the Downtown Association on a semi-regular basis. I've got friends who work for the SJDA, so it only helps if people talk to each other. You know what I mean? We've got friends with the Will Glen Business Association, and I'm actually being pulled in to talk to other business improvement districts, to kind of, I don't know if I'd say advise them, but just offer them our perspectives, because we have a budget of next to nothing. All the things that we're doing here are completely volunteer. My role is volunteer. Our board's role is volunteer. The farmers market is run by volunteers. You know, so I think people are kind of like, how do you do this with no money? You know, and being able to say, well, this is what we've learned over a certain amount of time. It only benefits everybody else in San Jose. We don't want to go, oh, look, Japantown's so cool. Everybody else is having a hard time. That just doesn't do it. That doesn't help anyone. So, for example, I went to another business association, and it's all very grassroots. They're like, okay, what would you focus on? And I'm like, cleanliness, number one. I said, get out there and sweep in front of your stores. Something super basic, right? You know, but just sweep to the curb. People don't want to go someplace that's not clean. This is why people, for all of its you know, issues, Santana Row is a nice place to go. You walk around, you're not going to step in mud, you know, it's, you want to go to a place where, and I say, wash your front windows. Nobody wants to go into a store that has crappy windows, you know, because it's almost like the whole vision of what you're offering. If you can't take, like, if you're not going to welcome people on the outside of your store, they're not going to feel welcome when they go in. You don't want to have this, like, it's all cool to have this hole in the wall place where you go, oh, once you go in, it's so lively and clean. But if it's dirty on the outside, you're not going to get that new audience. So I always say, and it doesn't cost anything to do that, to go outside, get a broom, sweep your front step, wash your front windows, basic stuff like that. And then get to know your neighbors, you know, keep an eye out for your neighbors, you know. So it's, yeah, I whenever it comes to collaborating with other business districts, I do my best. And hopefully at some point, you know, we can pass like, I don't plan to be in this position forever. I really don't want to be. It needs to go to the younger generation. It needs to go to somebody else, and they can take their vision and go with it. But I think there's certain things that always remain true. People want to go someplace clean. So, you know, whatever that takes, you know, extra brooms, extra cleaning, extra mops, I don't know, but that's what I tell most starting business districts that are starting out. You know, like my dad was cleaning graffiti long before the city was even subsidizing that. They still don't. He walks around with acetone. He's got all this stuff. He cleans it off. You know, that's just what we do. So, and I think that's what people like to see.
One question I could add to that as an added question is, what is your sense of the challenges in terms of cross-generational organizing around preserving the community as being, locally owned? Do you see certain differences in perspective in terms of how things should look and how you should move forward as a community?
Oh yeah, there's always a difference intergenerationally. So there was, when we first started out, I used to hear this complaint a lot, like, oh well, Japantown needs to look more Japanese. And then I'd turn right back around and go, okay, so do your grandkids own a business here? When's the last time they were here helping clean? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess. It's like, you can't, like, I laugh whenever I see somebody on Reddit saying, oh, Japantown is so not Japanese anymore. And I'm like, I can't force people to open Japanese businesses here. Like, I can't force somebody to go into the restaurant business, which is, one of the hardest businesses you can go into and go, oh, by the way, I got a wish list. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see another udon place. I want to see another yakitori place. I would like this, like, yeah, it would benefit me to have a variety of Japanese foods here, but I can't force somebody to do that. Whoever wants to come in and is willing to put the money towards infrastructure, and it's just a massive endeavor, especially with the difficulty it is to open a business in San Jose. So whenever I hear like a perspective from maybe 40 to 50 years old, and I'm just going, things are different now. Like I even spoke with a landlord who used to have a restaurant about 40 years ago. And he goes, I don't understand why this business isn't making money. And I said, you ran a restaurant 40 years ago. The margins are not like they are now. You can't use that same metric anymore to determine somebody's availability or their success. So, I'm kind of the loud one where if someone bitches about something, I'll sit there and go, no. Things are different now. Let's be realistic, So then I tell them, like, so would you rather have no businesses here? So you don't want, if let's say you just want it to be Japanese, that cuts out like 80% of Japantown, because even the Japanese businesses are sometimes run by Filipinos, Hispanic families, and so forth. So what does it matter? You know what I mean? So the main thing is that we have a lively and robust area that it still honors its heritage. It doesn't have to be all Japanese, and so with regards to sustainability, I think it's going to be harder and harder for private entities to maintain businesses here because it's not financially reasonable. Corporations are able to buy in bulk. They're able to negotiate low rents. That may not always be the case here. You know what I mean? So my great concern about the sustainability of this area is maintaining small businesses and individual landlords. So, how we're able to make that work, I'm racking my brain on it. I do want to establish a land trust, so that we have community owned buildings here, and it's not for residences. It's for businesses, because everybody down here, this is their side gig outside of the restaurateurs. Literally everybody here has a real job. You know what I mean? And it gets to a point where it's really hard. Like I'm fried. I'm super burnt out trying to maintain a corporate job and then the civic stuff. And everyone down here is doing the same thing. It works when you're in your 20s and you got a little bit more energy, but by the time you hit your 40s, you have kids, you have responsibilities, you want to relax, you just don't have the same energy. And maintaining that same ferocity is very difficult. So I always tell people, like, have a little bit of flexibility, have a little bit of understanding, because everybody here is working double shift. So you got a clothing store that's really a clothing store, but they really have another job. How often can you say that, like, you go to a community where everyone's, got 2 jobs and trying to maintain a front facing presence. It's not easy, you know. So,
You know, one suggestion was to get grant funding to fund civic leaders in the community. Do you think that would help so that they wouldn't have to spread themselves so thin?
yes, yeah, I do, because we don't have the same kind of engagement that we want, both in volunteerism and civic leadership. My role as the president of the JBA, I also just stepped down as vice president of the Community Congress. I'm a commissioner for the Downtown Parking Board, so I can report back on our parking meters. And it's very hard to get other people to want to sign up for this stuff because they're taxed already. You know, you don't get paid for this. You don't get paid to be on a board, but everybody here is you know, giving up their evenings and weekends and trying to make it work for the sake of the neighborhood. And at a certain point, it's not sustainable. You know, somebody's got to. It's the landlord's got to help out with their tenants by, if they can, giving them lower rent so that they have that little extra bandwidth to donate back to the community. It could be the landlords charging the businesses a little bit less to for the rental spaces so that there's a little bit more bandwidth. You know what I mean? Everybody can do a little bit of something. But having some sort of federal structure or some sort of subsidy of our leaders would be very helpful, because right now we're taxing the same people over and over and over again, expecting them to, you know, participate. Like I get emails and phone calls 24/7 where people are like, can you join this meeting? Can you join that one? Can you give your feedback? And I'm like, I'm going to shoot off an email as quick as I can, because I'm literally, you know, I get not able to give more. And everybody in Japantown is in that same boat. They've already given up too much.
So in answering your earlier question, we did interview Rory Fukura and Panto Yamaichi, and those are, you know, some elders that we were picking their brain, you know, about their experience growing up, and you know, some of the topics that come up is the internment, or the, you know, the effects of that on the community, you know, like we said, COVID, and just one of the sort of big questions is how do we work intergenerationally, but also, you know, how has maybe technology shaped some of this transformation of community and the meaning of community? And those are kinds of the questions that come up. Maybe technology is something that you could talk just really briefly about, and how that plays a role in sort of shaping the way that community plays out.
I think, you know, as far as sharing our resources and stories, technology has definitely helped. It's also a little bit of a stumbling block in the sense that everyone is having to change their procedures. You know, like the organizations are having to get tech savvy, and there are always, you know, stumbling blocks with that. You know, getting everybody to have their materials in a safe cloud storage, having everybody with appropriate permissions to, you know, the website, to your back-end documents, your formation documents, making sure that everyone understands how to use the emails properly. That's where you see the intergenerational, you know, a little bit of bubbles, you know, popping up. As far as, but getting the word out, there's no better, you know, tool. You know, I use Instagram, we use Facebook for communication a lot. We have a group that we share notices with each other that's way better than, and has a better engagement rate than email. You know what I mean? Emails just get lost. So people are using the tools appropriately, and I think it's helping them level up, but the learning curve is also a little trickier when it comes to orgs and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I love what Miss Lynn is doing. She's raised so many of us, and it's cool to see my cousins who were students at Lotus now bringing their kids in to be taught by her. I absolutely love it. It makes me so happy. You know, my nieces went to Lotus, you know, and then Rory, he grew up with my parents, you know, so his father had was a barber on Jackson Street. And when his father passed, Rory gave me all of his father's barbering equipment. So, I mean, love that guy. Everyone has their part in our history, you know, so.
And you said you are doing art too, right? As part of one of your career gigs.
Yeah, well, so whenever I can, I do graphic design for, you know, like the banners in Japantown I designed. I do some public arts projects when I can. I have a tattoo studio that I occasionally work out of. I'm covered in tattoos, you know, that's my thing. Yeah, I love them, but I need to spend more time tattooing. And then, you know, I'm a classically trained painter. These are my paintings. And that honestly, I do miss doing more art because it doesn't pay the bills. You know, I have to do the corporate stuff. But my hope is to get back into art a lot more. But
And do you think the aesthetic in Japantown reflects kind of what you would like to see, or do you feel like there has to be some sort of cultural work around an aesthetic that reflects both the old and the new?
That's a good question. I think it's done a pretty decent. We've got a decent thing going on. You know what I mean? We have our monuments. The priority over the last couple of years has been getting them back, getting them repaired. We had our Nikkei lantern, which is that white angle that's on the corner of 5th and Jackson. The lights had been dead for 10 years, if not longer than that. We got that repaired with the help of Palmer Electric. We've got our lanterns on 5th and Taylor. Palmer Electric also donated the time to repair those. Empire 7 is constantly working with the landowners to have murals on the sides of their buildings. You know, getting the landlords to like let go a little bit and have artwork on the side of their building has been huge. So I don't know that we need to necessarily do any more to honor the past. We have our lanterns, we have the benches, the historic benches that tell the stories of the parcels that they sit in front of. I feel like that's been covered in so many ways. We have monuments all over the place. So, but we're also starting to get a lot more the new vibe in here too, and I'm happy to see that. So I haven't really thought that we need to do more in terms of enhancing that so much as we're still kind of in repair mode. You know what I mean? There are storefronts that need new awnings. We need sidewalks to be repaired. We are slowly taking out trees that are dying, need to be replaced, things like that, just to help with the general ambiance, not necessarily make it more Japanese or more historic or anything like that.
Okay, wow, that's great. So we got a lot of interesting answers in a very quick sort of high energy Tamiko Rast way. So much for your time. It's about 2:19. Is there anything last things anybody wants to say besides thank you so much for this amazing interview?
Yeah, ask away if anyone has any other questions. I'm an open book.
Anybody want to say anything?
I have a question. You mentioned tattoos. How long have you been tattooing?
About a decade.
Nice.
About a decade. And I got started because my friends saw that I was classically trained, and then they kind of forced me into it. So as soon as I started getting tattooed, they said, you know, this is a natural fit for you. And I went through the process of, you know, I set up a shop. It's fully licensed, fully certified. And, you know, I probably only ink once a month, but I really do want to get back into it. And it's just, there's something about it that's a lot different than being in front of a computer. You know what I mean? You talk to people, you engage with them. It's very personal. There are people it's like therapy. You know what I mean? They tell me stuff that like nobody else knows. And I feel very honored that I'm part of that. So, and I'm not ashamed to tell people that's a bad idea. Don't do that, because it's not my main gig. So I will tell somebody don't do that. That's not a good idea. You're going to regret that. Let's wait. Everyone comes in through word of mouth. I'm not on Yelp, not on any of those things. It's just, there's no signage. My shop is right on the other side of Roy's. If you know, you can always find me somewhere in Japantown. And I love that. So it's almost like growing with people. You know what I mean? I tattoo families. I tattoo the kids of the people I work with at the city. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. I'm very grateful for that. So
That's super cool. That's awesome.
thanks.
I actually had a question. When your parents decided to adopt, was that considered like a strange thing in your community at the time? Like, did people have any reactions to it?
Yeah, I would have to say that there were family members that could not understand it, and our siblings are all mixed race, African American. So that caused some issues, because people were like, those are kuruchans, black kids, and it's like, ultimately it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? And my younger sister Crystal, she's more Japanese than I am. It's really neat to see. So she eats better with chopsticks. She knows how to cook Japanese food. She works here in Japantown. I consider her like the next generation of leadership for Japantown. She's getting involved. I think she's joining the Japantown Neighborhood Association. And so let's face it, like the folks who came out of internment had the, I wouldn't say the justification, but they had the reasons for hating pretty much a lot of folks, fair or not. And I don't want to dismiss those feelings, but I don't want to adopt them either. You know what I mean? My grandparents weren't thrilled, but they came around. And people find out. I think there's just a lot of fear that came out of internment, where people are like, well, we don't trust this person, we don't trust that person. Maybe this person was assigned to take care of the family's property and then sold it out from under them. It was a lot of fear-based reactions to things. And then you've got, adoption, and people are just like, well, shit, if they have a hard time acknowledging a mixed race pairing, how about, adoption? But ultimately, I think attitudes and perspectives towards all of those things have changed significantly in the last 20 years.